makes kind of sense. But then when he started talking about how like teachers in schools would lower their standards just to pass and get that federal money, I think that is like just crazy and it's so wrong. Because I remember after like a couple years of that, I noticed like some of the standards did lower in some of the high schools around me, and then ours just kept, and it was the same thing. But it's just that was the one that stuck out a little bit to me, just because I was involved in that law that passed.
My family, so I actually went to a public school for a while, and my mom pulled me out and she put me in a charter school. And that charter school is ran by a board of parents, and I am so glad that I went to a charter school rather than a public school because I was much more prepared for college than the kids that went to the public school. It's just that I wish I could go in depth of the difference that it made and how much the charter school actually prepped me and how much the public school and the public school system, Common Core and all that is just not helping our kids. That was just amazing to notice the difference.
I stuck my kids in the Connections Academy for quite a while, and it was amazing. I had two boys who struggled in the school structure, and they were getting straight A's. They were, yeah, same thing. And it's really sad because I'm on the school board in this little town out here, and they keep saying, how do we bring our kids back? And I'm thinking, you know what? Well, let's see, where should we start?
Like, don't get me started.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody else?
I, like you, I have so many pages of notes, and like you said, the first like 7 minutes, I kept thinking, it's going to take me forever to get through these 45 minutes. I keep pausing and pausing and pausing, but no, I really enjoyed it, and I kind of don't know where to start, what I thought was interesting or what stuck out to me, but I guess one thing he said, we are reaching in this country a tipping point at which a majority of Americans are related to the government, either as government employees or the government's clients. Mm-hmm. And that, I don't know, was interesting to me, and it's so true, and, you know, brings that, you know, lack of independence, and you know, we are starting more and more. You know, the majority are relying on not themselves and relying on the government, and that's a scary thing, and something that we should all be concerned about. And I just think this, you know, entitlement that we have so greatly in this country is of, you know, huge concern, and at some point there will be an end or a disaster or, you know, something that is major, like you said, a tipping point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was scary because he said, I wrote this down from him about people being dependent. He said that the government is giving a menu of temptations, and it's changing in an attempt to change the social norms and the nation's character. And I was like, that is so true, because our character from, you know, in the past was we were always preparing for the future, and now we're borrowing from it. Yeah. And people are so entitled to what they get. And I think I mentioned it on one of the discussion boards where my aunt was in California where a lot of people were on food stamps, and she'd wait in line forever, and how they were just rude people because they were entitled. She's like, you should not be feeling entitled because you have food stamps. And it was just, she's like, I couldn't understand the mentality of that. And I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I live out on a farm in the middle of Colorado. So, but yeah, like, I agree with you, Colette. Anybody else? Michaela?
Yeah, it's funny. Oh, go ahead, Michaela.
Oh, I was just going to say, pretty much everything I thought was said. The one that stuck out to me was the No Child Left Behind one, because I was also in school when it like went into action, and my parents almost immediately ripped us out of public schools and put us in in charter schools. So that's what I remember about it from my childhood, is that all of a sudden public schools were like the things to stay away from in my family. It was very interesting.
Mhm.
I'm kind of laughing right now because all of us clearly agree that um, this was just one of those things where you weren't picking out quotes. You had to write down every word. Um, it would have, I was looking for the transcript. So I opened up my notes, and it's kind of funny because I have notes like, oh, you got to listen to the 35-minute mark again, or oh, minute 42 talks about the retiree and the workers for a retiree, and I'm like, these are my notes because I wanted to go back and I forgot that I wanted to go back. And I even have the 39-minute mark. I have my notes that says aha moment, and so I'm sitting here trying to listen to the. I can't believe I didn't like write down what the aha moment was. I was just so busy writing down the marks. So um, it's kind of funny because I have a lot to say and I don't know where my notes are. But the thing that they all stood out for me, everything stood out for me. But when he held up that stack of papers, and that's what I was looking for right now, was when he held up a huge stack of papers. Does anybody remember what that huge stack of papers was? And then he showed the small, small, small stack from the founding fathers.
Yeah, so the 2 pages was the Homestead Act.
Oh yeah.
And then the big chunk of bill was something that was passed in Nevada. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was. But yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember I was helping a congressman here run for Congress, and he brought the stack of Obamacare, and he said it took 2 days just to print it out. And it was so huge. It was like 3 times huger than the stack that George held up, and you know, it's just ridiculous, really.
Absolutely crazy. I think there's one woman there. I can't. She's a black lady. I can't remember her name, but she's in Utah and she's trying to pass a law that says if it's more than
Maya,
yeah,
yeah.
something. She's trying to pass something that's like if it's more than X amount of pages and can't be understood by, I remember her trying to push that. I was like, you go, girl.
Yeah.
Okay,
She's
so
one to
we'll move on to.
watch.
Yeah, she is fun. So we're going to move on real quick because we've been talking about children a little bit and the No Child Left Behind Act. And the third question is, what could the government be doing right now to help this situation? And I know he was talking a bit broad, but maybe focusing in on that, we can address the next couple of questions. But what did he suggest was the problem? Anyone remember? A problem that no one wants to talk about.
Okay.
So he, in his speech or whatever, he said that because people are independent, we need to write a new tax code and simplify bills. But then he moves on to the family, and he talked about how 1 in 3 children are born out of wedlock, and how schools cannot teach children who are disorderly. He's like, it doesn't matter if we're proposing bills that no children can be left behind and have 100% proficiency by 2014. That's not solving our problem. Our problem is we don't have intact families. That's how I read into it. Does anybody agree?
Yeah. It was interesting to. It's fun to be able to take some of these classes, and if we all notice, they're all collaborating together, and information's repeated with the statistics and everything. And so I just lost my train of thought. Oh, I was talking with sorry, I was calling supervisor, superintendent, And we had just gone to a board meeting conference training down in Portland, and the theme, and I was surprised because Oregon, I don't know if you guys noticed, but everything bad comes out of Oregon first. It's humiliating. But they were actually talking about how families have to be first, and somehow it kind of scared me because the school wanted to get involved with families, but their point is we need to have parenting classes, because if we can strengthen families, and I could not believe that they said this, but if we can strengthen families, then we can strengthen our school systems. And it was interesting when I brought that back to my school board, because only a few of us showed up. They just kind of set it aside. And I said, I actually have some access to some parenting classes that can already be set up, and they just passed it off and said, no, we need to focus on priorities. So it was interesting.
Wow. That's sad.
Yeah. So. Sorry.
It's like, that was me. Wow, that's so crazy. I really do think that, my visiting teachers were over last night, and the message is about the Family Proclamation this month, and I actually just vomited on them all night last night. I'm like, this is what I'm learning in class, and this is what families can do, like it applies to blah, 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 because families really are the fundamental unit of society, and if a family isn't structured, we see those ripple effects all the way up to the macro system. What do you guys think? Before I keep barfing.
No, I agree. You're saying everything that's like in my mind.
Yeah. It's funny how we have these similar experiences.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's interesting how, even though there's been so much research even on how beneficial it is to have strong families, they're still getting tossed aside, just like Katie's example of how they just pushed it aside, like, no, that's not really what it is. It's got to be something else. It's just so interesting that we know the solution, yet nobody wants to admit that it's the solution or act on the solution.
And that's my question. See, I don't want to go off. That's why I try to keep my mouth quiet. How are we getting so many people in these higher positions, or positions that make decisions for our family and community? Where are we? Where are people like us in these places? Because I'm not understanding why people have this mindset. And is it ignorance? Is it, Satan's advocates? At what point? That's what I'm trying to figure out at this point, is who's in charge and why do they think this way? Because this, like you said, Alexis, it seems so obvious, but
Colette, you seem to be thinking.
I'm thinking about her question because it's a great set of questions, and I'm not sure how to answer that. Because I think, is that really what the majority of Americans want? Maybe it is, and obviously, I mean, from our last videos, she talked about how they have the money, and they have, like, as far as in the United Nations, they have the money, they have the majority, and they're the louder voices. And I don't, are we not being loud enough, I guess, is what I'm thinking. And, what can we do to be louder and to put our mark out there as well? Our thoughts.
And see, that's why I like this class, because I think it's teaching us to be louder. I've loved my classes, but this one just stands out above the rest on how we're educated to research and the data and to speak up. It's empowering.
I think it was last class when they asked when the question was asked, what's system do you feel most comfortable in, or do you feel most important in doing? And my answer was, I feel the most important doing it in a miso, because I want to be the one to go out and teach other families, hey, if we can have good families, this is the effect that we can have. And it's teaching, people our age, my age, your age, about what we know, because it does start. And I love that quote that he said, that change does not start at the ballot box. John Deere didn't start at the ballot box. And I was like, that is awesome. You're putting it in people's own power to change things. And I think that's a notion that's been really lost, that people don't feel like that they can make any change, and it's not true. So I don't know. I think that's one thing that I want to do, is to speak louder, is just to make that conversation start with people that I know, people who are around me. And when my visiting teachers came over last night, they read a quote in the message that says it does apply to me when I didn't think it did, because I am a mom, I am a sister, or whatever. And I said, hey, you got to check out this book. And it's our book that we got, that's the Proclamation Principles for Family. And I said, this stuff is packed with research about why intact families work, what things we need to learn about, infidelity, or, same-sex marriage, why that doesn't work. And they go, I think a lot of people, a lot of members don't feel like they have those resources to talk about it logically rather than just religiously. And I'm like, this is the class that you guys need to take, because it really teaches us how to get on the fence post and be like, get off the fence post and get out there with research that we don't have to pull out the religious card. Because, just even this, when he was talking about, wedlock, children being born out of wedlock, and how does this issue impact families, communities, and the nation, I'm like, well, we can see that if families, at a little system, it caught the attention on a macro level, because then the government said, we need to have a No Child Left Behind Act. And then that rippled back all the way down. So we do have a change, and I'm like, oh, I totally see that now, but I wouldn't have been able to put that in words. And I'm like, you guys gotta just take this class. Maybe I should go to my bishop and say, hey, we need a marriage family class. Like, let's do it. I don't know. I was just getting really excited last night about this class and talking to my visiting teachers. Anyway, I should just be quiet.
I love watching your enthusiasm.
I just get so excited. This class just makes me excited. Does anybody want to have any random thoughts they want to throw at me from blabbing?
Well, what's absolutely fascinating about this class is I have the privilege and the curse of teaching seminary, and it is so hard to keep my mouth quiet about these things to my students, because every story aligns with what we're doing now. The strength of the family, the purpose of Adam and Eve having the first family, and just yesterday we were talking about Gideon just being the least of these. He kept saying, I'm the least of these. How can I do this, Heavenly Father? And then he's given this, he has an army of 32,000, and Heavenly Father says, oh, no, that's too much. It brings him all the way down to 300. And just the fact that Gideon listened to the Lord changed thousands of lives, and just trying to get the kids to understand the effect that they have on society as an individual. And I think I'm more convinced that is the way that Heavenly Father set it up. He never wanted majorities. He never wanted groups. He put the strength in individuals. Joseph Smith, 14 years old, and little Samuel, because we're in Samuel right now. One person and the power that they have. But I think Satan understands that too. So, kind of went off there, sorry.
No, you're good. I was going off.
Oh, I wanted to say, sorry, I am. He said we need to secure and defend natural rights. And what I've been saying lately is not the traditional family, but the natural family, because it's harder for people to argue the natural family. A boy and a girl make a baby. You can't argue that. And traditional family is kind of a definition that man has given to the family, not God. God, it's the natural family. So that's some vocabulary that I've changed lately. And that's not religious.
Yeah, that's a good point. Does anybody else want to share anything? I want to get back. It was the question, how is this issue impacting children, families, communities, and our nation? And that was kind of how each system affects one another. I don't know if anyone wants to share any other thoughts about that. Or should I move on? Move on. Okay. So this is the last few questions. It says, according to Dr. Will, one thing that you can do for your country is reserve a spacious portion of your life for which your country is not responsible. Do you agree with that statement, anyone, or not?
Well, when I first heard him say that, I was like, I kind of had an aha moment, like what Katie had said, that really the government wasn't meant to control every bit of our lives. And if it does, then um, especially with the trends that are going now, like everything is just going to spiral down because it's going to be, uh, I mean, you're not going to have choice, and choice is what makes things successful. And so when he said that, I was like, what can we do to reserve it? Because it almost seems like they are, I don't know, the government is pushing themselves on us, and it's almost hard to keep that part away from them. Not necessarily that we're giving it to them, but that they are taking it away, if that makes any sense at all.
I think so. I mean, if you look at some of the policies that are being pushed, it really makes people dependent on the government's resources. Like, even going back to the Child Left Behind Act, you know, why it was such a sweeping majority of why Common Core is there is because they were giving the incentive for states. They're like, we will fund you if you do this. And so that's, I mean, that they're just, I don't know what he said. He said, we're weaving a network of dependency. And, you know, when I look at what's being pushed, and even like the main theme of our other discussion board was like, we're not teaching self-reliance. The government isn't teaching self-reliance at all. It's just breeding more dependency. And so I think it's really hard for people to get out of that habit when the government is providing all of these incentives or temptations to be relied on. So I agree that they're kind of pushing it on us and we're not really recognizing the consequences of it. So I agree with you.
When I talk to my kids about this, oh, go ahead, Alexis.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that's kind of what I was thinking, because I wrote down a quote that he said, and it was like, we can dodge our responsibilities, we cannot dodge the consequences for dodging our responsibilities. And I think that, like you were saying, people are so relied on the incentives that the government gives us. Like in our other discussion board that we had to do this week, we had to look up like something that the government was doing in our small groups, and I looked up like welfare, because my husband's cousin is a single mother of 3, and she is heavily relying on welfare, and she's like, I'm always going to be on it. Like, she's not even looking for a job, she's not even trying to like better her life. And I think that people get so comfortable with those types of things and like the things that the government is promising them, and I think that that's really crushing the whole country and just everybody. They just don't know how to rely on themselves or fend for themselves. So that's kind of what I like, and I love that quote that he said. Me
too. I wrote that down too.
Yeah.
I did too. I commented on somebody's, I think it was Alexis, on the discussion board. But you know, the church has a welfare program, but they do it the right way. It's you know, I had an amazing opportunity to be in a calling for 4 years where I was able to help with that. And I would go into the homes, and you know, we had to sit down and set goals, and And it couldn't just be something that they relied on month to month. They had to do their part, and they had to, want to achieve something and want to better themselves. And I think there are times in our lives that, we need help, or we know people that do need help, and that's okay, because we're supposed to take care of the poor and the needy and the widows and whatnot. But there needs to come a time that we help them to become more and to do more. And, their full potential is not relying on someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that stood out for me, I think why we were so overwhelmed because he covered so many issues, and he covered a lot of time frame too. But something he said twice. He said something to the effect of, "We are on a predicting path." And that was disturbing to me, that a lot of things that we're dealing with are easy to research, lots of data of where we're going to go and what kind of problems it's going to cause. And when I talk to my kids, since we're in Oregon, you really have to educate and prepare them for what they're going to hear at school. But I said, when you're talking about government kind of things and just some of these issues, I said, I want you to pay attention to Satan's plan and God's plan. Just remember, Heavenly Father's plan is about agency and about change. And Satan's plan is about no choices, telling you what you have to do. And it's interesting when they come home, they're like, oh yeah, they were talking about an issue, and they'll say, oh, we get it, Mom, the government really isn't making good choices, are they? So they're recognizing just that plan of freedoms that are being taken away because we are forced to do some of these things, and it's just crazy.
I liked one of the quotes that he said is that we used to borrow for the future and not from the future.
Yeah.
And I really like that, because if we keep borrowing from the future, what do we have left? Eventually you run out of other people's money. And I was like, oh my word, if I could tell that to the young generation of today and be like, you can't have college for free, and you can't do these things because you're never going to build the character that you need to in order to be successful. And I think it was Colette's post in the other discussion board where you mentioned that recipients of the blessings of freedom, and I was like, the people who are always going to be dependent on others will never be free and enjoy the blessings of what comes with freedom. Because there's no blessings in Satan's plan, like you said, Katie. There's none. If you're always dependent on something, you can't enjoy the blessings of freedom. And yeah, I really like that quote. You can't borrow from the future. We used to borrow for the future, but not anymore, and it's going to lead us on a path where we're just going to be in way too deep. So.
And you know what's conflicting about that is we're giving people things for free. We're just handing things out. So when you're given something free, the natural reaction is sitting there waiting for more free stuff. There's no progression, there's no goal setting, and then we wonder what's wrong with our school system and why our kids don't set goals and why they're not achieving, and then we raise the bar at school that they can't reach because we I don't know, do you see the contradiction in that message? Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of what he said about the rental car, how he says you never wash a rental car. And it's kind of that same idea. If the government keeps handing things out for free, then the value of those things will become lower and lower because people will see them as like free. They won't value them because they didn't have to work for them. They just got handed to them. And so then like it'll be harder and harder for them to get to the point where they would want to work for it, because in their minds there's no value attached to it because they've always just been handed it.
Yeah.
That was a really good analogy. I like that. At the very beginning of his his speech, he asked a question. I can't remember who he was talking about, but they're like, "How did you get in debt?" And he's like, "In two ways." He's like, "Gradually and suddenly." And I was like, "Oh my word, that is so true," because we can talk about how it's such a predictable path that people won't catch on to it until something tragic happens, unfortunately. But anyway, those are the last of the questions. Does anybody want to share anything else? Any thoughts?
I wanted to share.
Comment
Go
that
ahead.
I really liked. He said, gridlock is not an American problem, it's an American achievement. We don't need an efficient government, we need a safe government, one that protects our rights but isn't so strong it threatens them. And, you know, that's really what the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence is all about, is to protect us, but to let us be us and not to overtake us. And so, you know, I just feel like that's a concern and something that, you know, we need to think about. And he said we can get better by choosing to get better. And I agree with that. And we are trying to do our part to choose to get better.
I like that.
So I have to ask a question. When you guys read the Declaration of Independence, I always just read the Declaration of Independence, but I saw below that they had a list of why they want to do this and what the king was doing and was not doing. Did you guys see that list?
Mm-hmm.
And was anybody bothered because it looked familiar to maybe some leaders today?
It was so funny because when I read it, I was sitting here and my husband was sitting on the couch next to me, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!" He goes, "What?" I go, "Why hasn't a revolution started yet?" So I was like, "This is crazy."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I had the same thought.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I apologize. I do have one more thought, and I'll make it quick. So I'm really glad he brought up the, let me look. Where is it? Well, let's just call it the demographic winter. Y'all watched that yet?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm glad he brought up that fact because I love something someone posted in one of my classes. I can't even remember. It was probably last semester, where I wonder if this is how Heavenly Father intervenes, because the LDS community is still having lots of children, and you know, if everybody else is not having children, then how'd she put it? Since we're all having children, we're gonna like overtake the world, right? And she said that's the intervention and that's the hope. And I just thought, I think that every time somebody brings up the older generation is going to overtake the younger generation, or people who have bigger families are going to take over the culture. So kind of a hopeful message, twisted maybe, but hopeful.
I was really glad that we read Quentin L. Cook's talk. That was definitely a hopeful moment. I'm like, oh man, there's still some good to look forward to. Go us, but know the gospel.
Yeah.
Okay. So who summarized today's discussion? I can't remember who it was.
I did.
Okay. Do you want to go over that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I have a lot of notes, but I'm going to try and keep it somewhat short. We all loved the video and couldn't write fast enough to get all the notes we wanted on it. But the New Deal was mentioned, and how we've been taught that it seemed to have been such a great thing, but it actually had many flaws that could have caused more damage than it did good. The No Child Left Behind Act really did cause some schools to lower their standards rather than increasing the students' performance, which was the opposite effect of what was desired. And it's almost scary how dependent on the government American people are becoming. Families are the fundamental unit of society, and yet it's sad how they get increasingly pushed aside. We're learning to be louder when defending the family and our beliefs because the opposition is extremely loud. Changes don't start at the ballot box, but can start with a single individual. We should use the term natural family rather than traditional family because of the past. I didn't even know how to word this in my writing, but I'll figure it out. Because of the past idea of what traditional family means and how natural family is a lot more acceptable. If we keep borrowing from the future, we'll have nothing left and we'll run out of other people's money. And then people don't wash rental cars, which means people will not value things they don't have to work for. And the whole point of government is to protect us while allowing us to be ourselves. And when reading the Declaration of Independence, it was interesting to see how some of the faults mentioned that were attributed to the king were somewhat similar to our current government. And those are basically the big ideas that I have on here.
Perfect.
I like it. Thank you for doing that. Does anybody want to be the group? I don't know. What am I today? Leader?
Has everybody had a turn?
I think we all have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will be glad to do it next time. I think we've made it full circle.
Has Susan done it yet? Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
She did. We should maybe get her phone number so that we can make sure that she's not having issues getting on or something.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I know, because I was her partner for the article group project, and I know that she's been going through some crazy things lately, and so we had to work with the teacher to get stuff done. So I don't know how she's doing, but yeah, I'll try and get her phone number and see what I can do to help her, and or you guys too. But
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so Katie, you'll do the group lead next week. And does anyone want to write a summary? Because I can do it. I know I was the first person to do it, so I can do that.
Okay.
You want me? Okay. I'll do that. I'll do the summary next time. But, okay, guys, you are awesome. I love all your points. It's so much fun to get on and like just talk about families because I'm sure my husband is so tired of hearing me talk about what I learn every day. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. But anyway, today was good. Hope you guys had fun.
Yep. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ashley.
Okay. Well, you guys have a good day.
Hey, you too. Thanks, ladies, for all your thoughts.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.